Story number 1. In the heart of the quiet town where our parents grew up, there was a tunnel. Not just any tunnel. This one had an eerie reputation that lingered like the shadows inside. My little sister, Emily, and I had heard the whispers from the kids at school. They spoke of strange sounds echoing, mysterious drafts that chilled the air even on the warmest days, and the tunnel being a gateway to an underworld of unimaginable horrors. We laughed it off, dismissing it as childish tales spun to entertain. One gloomy Saturday afternoon, however, curiosity got the better of us. Armed with a flashlight and fueled by the desire for adventure, Emily and I decided to explore the infamous tunnel ourselves. Our parents were away for the weekend, and the idea of a thrilling escapade seemed irresistible. As we approached the tunnel entrance, a shiver ran down my spine. The entrance was an uninviting black hole, swallowing all traces of daylight. With our flashlights cutting through the darkness, we ventured inside, exchanging nervous glances. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly into the abyss. The eerie silence inside was only broken by the echoing steps of our hesitant journey. Emily clung to my hand, her wide eyes reflecting the uncertainty that mirrored my own. As we delved deeper, the tunnel twisted and turned like a labyrinth designed to bewilder anyone who dared to enter. Time seemed to warp in that place. What felt like minutes turned into hours as we continued our descent into the unknown. I tried to reassure Emily, but my own unease grew with every step. The air became dense, and the echoes of our footsteps seemed to blend with distant, unsettling whispers. Suddenly, a deafening noise pierced the silence, startling us both. The entrance we had entered through had vanished, leaving us trapped in the suffocating darkness. Panic set in, and we frantically searched for an escape route. The tunnel, once our passage to excitement, had transformed into a claustrophobic nightmare. Days blurred into nights as we wandered aimlessly, our meager supplies dwindling. The darkness weighed heavily on us, and Emily's once lively spirit began to wane. Our flashlights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the damp walls like malevolent spirits. Food became a distant memory, and hunger gnawed at us. Emily, usually full of laughter, now had hollow eyes that mirrored my own desperation. We clung to each other for comfort, a fragile lifeline in the abyss. Sleep eluded us, haunted by unsettling dreams that blended with the disorienting reality of the tunnel. Strange whispers echoed, morphing into chilling laughter that seemed to originate from the shadows themselves. The oppressive darkness played tricks on our minds, conjuring phantoms that lurked just beyond the reach of our feeble light. Our perception of time shattered in that lightless void. A week felt like an eternity, each moment stretching and contorting into a surreal nightmare. Emily and I, once inseparable, clung to our sanity like fragile glass on the verge of shattering. As we stumbled through the tunnel's twisted passages, hope flickered like our failing flashlights. Our voices, once filled with determination, now quivered as we spoke in hushed tones, fearing the unknown that surrounded us. The wall seemed to close in, squeezing the last remnants of courage from our exhausted bodies. Then, just when all seemed lost, a faint glimmer of light emerged in the distance. A renewed surge of energy surged through us as we stumbled towards the elusive exit. The closer we got, the brighter the light became, until finally, we emerged into the blinding sunlight. The tunnel, our tormentor, spat us out into the daylight. Weak and disoriented, we emerged as if reborn. The world outside had changed, and the once familiar surroundings felt alien after our ordeal. Strangers passed by, oblivious to the darkness we had escaped. Story number 2. Once upon a time in our little town where excitement was as rare as a sunny day, my friends and I stumbled upon a tunnel. We'd heard tales about it, the spooky kind that folks tell around campfires to send shivers down your spine. But we were a daring bunch, and with nothing better to do on a lazy Sunday afternoon, we decided to explore this mysterious tunnel that seemed to be hidden away from the world. There were 5 of us: me, Jake, Lisa, Mike, and Sarah. We approached the tunnel with the bravado of kids who believed they were invincible. The entrance yawned before us, a dark mouth waiting to swallow our laughter and replace it with the unknown. "Come on, guys, let's see what's in there," Jake exclaimed, his voice echoing through the opening. We laughed nervously, but with an unspoken agreement, we entered the tunnel one by one, our flashlights cutting through the inky darkness. The tunnel wasn't as scary as we'd imagined. It was just a tunnel, damp, a bit musty, with the occasional cobweb that made us squirm. We joked and laughed, trying to outdo each other with silly stories and exaggerated tales of what might be lurking in the shadows. It was all fun and games until we reached a fork in the tunnel, and the laughter faded away. "Which way, guys?" Lisa asked, shining her flashlight down each passage. "Let's split up," Mike suggested with a mischievous grin, attempting to keep the mood light. But Sarah, always the sensible one, shook her head. "Nah, that's a bad idea. We should stick together." We took the left passage, hoping it would lead us to some hidden treasure or secret chamber, and we continued our playful banter. However, as we ventured deeper, the air grew heavier and the tunnel seemed to narrow. Unease settled over us like a heavy fog. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed through the tunnel, a faint cry that sent a chill down our spines. We exchanged glances, the jovial atmosphere evaporating. Panic crept in as we realized one of us was missing. It was Jake. "Jake, stop messing around!" Mike called out, but his voice trembled with genuine concern. We retraced our steps, calling Jake's name, our flashlights scanning the walls for any sign of him. The once familiar tunnel now felt like a labyrinth, and the shadows seemed to whisper ominous secrets. As we backtracked, we stumbled upon a chilling sight. Jake's flashlight lay on the ground, its beam eerily pointing towards the ceiling. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating us with the realization that something was terribly wrong. "Okay, this isn't funny, Jake. Where are you?" Lisa's voice wavered. Just as fear settled in our hearts, we heard Jake's voice, distant and filled with terror. "Help! I'm stuck!" Following his cries, we came across a narrow passage where Jake was wedged between the walls, his eyes wide with panic. It took all our combined strength to free him, and when he emerged, he was disheveled and shaken. "I don't know what happened. I just walked ahead and suddenly I couldn't move," Jake stammered, his face pale. Unease settled in our group like an unwelcome guest, but we pressed on, convincing ourselves it was a freak accident. Little did we know, our adventure had taken a sinister turn. As we ventured deeper into the tunnel, strange things began to happen. Unexplained noises echoed around us, and our flashlights flickered as if threatened by an unseen force. The air became colder, and an oppressive darkness clung to the walls. Then, inexplicably, our surroundings changed. The tunnel twisted and turned in ways we hadn't encountered before. Panic gnawed at us, and we realized we were lost. The laughter that had echoed through the tunnel now seemed like a distant memory. With each wrong turn, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. Shadows seemed to dance along the walls, taking on eerie shapes that played tricks on our imagination. Our jokes were replaced by uneasy silence as the weight of the unknown bore down on us. As we stumbled through the labyrinth, Mike suddenly stopped. His eyes widened, and he pointed at the wall. Written in what seemed like blood were the words, "Leave or suffer." A collective gasp escaped us, and a chill ran down our spines. The playful adventure had transformed into a nightmarish ordeal. But there was no turning back. The tunnel seemed to mock our attempts to escape. We pressed on, fear riding shotgun with us. Another strange occurrence shook us to the core. Lisa, who had been leading the way, suddenly collapsed, clutching her chest. Panic seized us as we realized something malevolent lurked in the darkness. "Lisa, are you okay?" Sarah's voice trembled as we huddled around our fallen friend. I can't breathe," Lisa gasped, her face contorted in pain. In that moment, the tunnel seemed to close in on us. The air grew thick with an unseen force, and our flashlights flickered violently. Desperation set in as we tried to revive Lisa, but it was as if the life was being sucked out of her. And then, as suddenly as it began, Lisa's gasps subsided, and she lay motionless. The tunnel, now our tormentor, had claimed its first victim. Terror gripped us, and we fled through the twisting passages, haunted by the sinister presence that seemed to revel in our fear. The walls seemed to pulse with malevolence, our group dwindled as each member succumbed to the unknown horrors. Sarah vanished without a trace, and Mike was swallowed by shadows that seemed to reach out from the walls. It was just me, alone in the suffocating darkness, haunted by the whispers and the unrelenting feeling of being watched. In the pitch-black void, I stumbled upon an ominous chamber. The walls were adorned with crude drawings depicting our doomed journey, as if the tunnel itself was a malevolent entity, relishing in our demise. The air felt oppressive, and a guttural sound echoed through the chamber, sending shivers down my spine. With a sinking feeling, I realized I was the last one standing. The tunnel had consumed my friends, leaving me to face the unknown horrors that lurked in its depths. Story number 3. Once in my town, where things usually played out in a boring loop, I stumbled upon a tunnel. It wasn't fancy or famous, just a dark hole that whispered secrets. One day, curiosity nudged me, and armed with a simple flashlight, I entered the tunnel alone. The entrance greeted me like a hungry mouth, swallowing my courage. The first day was okay, a bit damp, a bit chilly. I chuckled at the echoes of my footsteps and the drip-drip of water, thinking I was on a small adventure. But as I wandered deeper, the air grew heavier. The flashlight did its best, but shadows danced on the walls like hidden creatures. Unease crept in, a feeling that someone or something watched me. Still, I pressed on, thinking it was just my imagination playing games. Day 1 ended with a nervous laugh and a triumphant escape into daylight. The tunnel, though a bit creepy, seemed harmless. Little did I know, it was just getting started. The next day, an invisible force pulled me back. The tunnel whispered, a beckoning call I couldn't resist. This time, the air in the tunnel felt different, almost alive. My flashlight flickered, protesting my venture into the shadows. The passage twisted and turned, confusing my senses. The echoes weren't friendly anymore. They sounded distant and strange. The walls seemed to close in, and the drawings I noticed looked sinister now, like twisted faces watching my every move. Then came a roar, a sound that didn't belong in a tunnel. My flashlight died, and the darkness swallowed me whole. Panic gripped me, and I stumbled blindly, hearing whispers that weren't mine. Escape became a desperate need, but the exit played hide and seek. Fear wrapped around me, and unseen hands seemed to reach out. It felt like hours before I glimpsed light, bursting into the day like a survivor. Nightmares haunted my sleep that night, twisted faces, distant roars, and an invisible force dragging me into darkness. Morning came, but the pull persisted, and I found myself standing at the tunnel's mouth once again. As I stepped in, the air turned heavy, and shadows seemed to coil around me. My flashlight betrayed me, flickering as if the tunnel despised my presence. The drawings twisted into grotesque shapes, and the echoes mocked my footsteps. In the oppressive darkness, something touched me. A cold, unseen hand that sent shivers down my spine. Fear tightened its grip, and I ran blindly. The tunnel stretched endlessly, my breaths ragged and desperate. And then silence. The exit appeared like a distant mirage, and I stumbled into the daylight, gasping for air. But the triumph was short-lived, overshadowed by the certainty that the tunnel craved my return. Days blurred into nights, and the tunnel became an obsession. Fear clung to me, a shadow that refused to let go. The distorted faces from the drawings haunted my waking hours, their silent screams echoing in my mind. With each return, the tunnel seemed angrier, more malevolent. Shadows whispered threats, and unseen hands became aggressive. Escape became a dance with death, and I knew I was playing a dangerous game. One day, the air in the tunnel felt different, almost electric. My flashlight flickered violently, and a guttural voice echoed, promising doom. Panic set in, and I ran blindly, stumbling over unseen obstacles. The walls closed in, and the exit became a mirage. Shadows reached out, pulling me back. Fear turned into terror, and I screamed, a desperate sound swallowed by the darkness. It felt like the tunnel itself was alive, a beast hungry for my fear. I tripped and fell, the ground cold against my cheek. The whispers intensified, blending into a cacophony of voices. I felt a pressure on my chest, a weight that threatened to crush me. The tunnel seemed to revel in my suffering. Then a blinding light. I emerged into the daylight, battered and broken. The tunnel had almost claimed me, leaving me gasping for air and trembling with fear. I stumbled away, my legs weak and my mind haunted. The tunnel, now a monster in my nightmares, seemed to laugh at my feeble escape. The town, oblivious to the horrors I faced, continued its mundane existence. I swore never to return, but the nightmares persisted. The tunnel had left its mark, distorted faces etched in my mind, whispers that echoed in the silence. Fear became my constant companion, and I found myself standing at the tunnel's entrance again, unable to resist its malevolent pull. As I stepped into the darkness, a voice, cold and mocking, echoed in my ears. "You can't escape. This is your eternal prison." The tunnel seemed to stretch infinitely, and I ran blindly, each step a desperate plea for freedom. But the exit remained elusive, and the darkness closed in. Shadows whispered, and the distorted faces leered at me. Panic consumed me, and I screamed into the abyss.